Got a copy of this?
Thank you.
Sure, be good.
No. When
Be
is
good.
it?
Good.
Oh, what is it? Louis McCarthy. Louis McCarthy.
That's
Okay,
it.
Yeah.
so it's there for you, good.
Hey, Bob, was it
Yeah.
Louis McCarthy?
Gentlemen, ready?
You're good.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the City of Palm Coast Council Workshop. Today is Tuesday, February the 8th, 2022. It's now 9 a.m. and we are in the community wing of City Hall. So with that, I would like to ask you all to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if the clerk would call the roll, please.
Mayor Alphin,
Present.
Vice Mayor Bronchino,
Right here.
Councilmember Barbosa,
Present.
Councilmember Danko,
Here.
Councilmember Clukas.
Present.
All members are present.
So we'll open the meeting this morning. Let's see, let me give my little spiel on the purpose of the meeting. Before we begin this morning, I wanted to take a moment to explain the City Council's objectives for having workshops every month. The council meets in workshops to be well informed of each item to be brought before the City Council and to make the best determination on behalf of all city residents. City staff presents detailed information during the workshops and provides a summary background for each item, as well as any additional documents relative to the item. The City Council can then have a meaningful, collaborative, healthy discussion on each item presented. This way, the facts and knowledge can be obtained prior to the next business meeting, where City Council then makes the best determination in the interest of the citizens' health, safety, and welfare on each item. As we continue to grow as a collaborative council and follow all council meeting policies and procedures, I will always do my best to make sure that every City Council member has an opportunity to bring forth individual opinions. Our constituents are expecting council to communicate cohesively and with civility to serve our community. The workshops are a valuable tool to present and discuss our individual opinions on behalf of all residents and achieve these objectives. We may not agree with each other, but that is one advantage of the workshops, to evaluate all the information necessary in advance of a decision, a motion, and a vote at our next business meeting. I hope that we all understand the purpose of these workshops, and I invite all opinions at all times on the dais. With that, we will move directly to public participation. And we have a limited audience this morning, so I won't go through the rules of public participation, but I think we all understand that each member of the public will enjoy 3 minutes of public comment time on any item that is not a part of the regular agenda. So at this time, I would invite the public to step forward and make public comment.
Good morning, Alan Lowe. I just handed in a packet for each of you with regards to the saltwater canals. I'm not going to go over the packet and all the stuff in it now. You can do it at your leisure. But one of the things I would like to bring to your attention is the very last page. There is a very large woman-owned dredging company, oddly enough, in Bunnell. And it services the entire east coast of the United States. They've dredged out for nuclear power plants and everything. The owner, I will be bringing to the next city council meeting. And before you go outside, and he's willing to donate some time, so before you go outside looking for, consultation and so forth, maybe we could shop local. This man, you didn't start the clock. I don't want to go past time.
That's okay.
This man, I spoke to him and his wife. His wife owns the company. They know all the permitting processes. They know the steps. They know everything we need. And we have a survey in there. It's a colored survey of the depths of all the canals in 2005. So we have, it didn't start. So we have, okay. We have all of the data from, the first page is in there are the permits and so forth that show that the original main canals were dug to 12 feet and the finger canals to 8 feet. We have a survey done by the city of Palm Coast in 2005 by a company called the Hutchinson Group, which shows the depth at 2005. And if we move forward with dredging, we'll need to do a survey now. The beauty of that is it will give us a database for the forward look of how fast that we're having siltation, has it increased, when would we need to do it again, and so forth. Additionally, when I spoke to the guy, I mentioned the $50 million price tag that has been thrown forward, which he laughed at, said we're probably looking at a fifth of that, which would be roughly 10 million. And that's if we did it ourselves, and he's willing to train dredge operators, which he says you only need one dredge operator to do it. I think we probably need a few more than that for different time frames and hours and so forth. And that would be spread out over 3 years. But this man is a wealth of knowledge. He's willing to give the knowledge, at least some of it, for free, and I think we should take advantage of it. So again, his information is on the last page there, and at your leisure, go through it, because there's a lot of information in there, including a complete dredging survey from Hillsborough County, Hillsborough County, on how they did it, what they looked at, the entire framework of what they did to dredge their canals, as well as Cape Coral is in there with all of the stuff that they did. So there's a lot of information in there, and I would appreciate it if you'd just take some time to look through it in the future. Appreciate it. I hope I didn't go over.
No. Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, please.
Robin McDonald, Palm Coast. Takes a lot for me to get upset. It even takes a lot for me to come to a council meeting and tell you that something happened last Tuesday night at the night meeting that I was highly offended by, and the only reason why I didn't bring it up in my comments, because this happened prior to the meeting, was because my Irish temper would have taken over, and that wouldn't have been good. So I'm going to bring it to your attention this morning, because what happened was an insult. I was disrespected, and that's not going to happen. Not here, not in this building. I went to come through security. I took everything out of my pockets. I put it up in the little basket. I attempted then to take my walker, and I opened up the seat of the walker to show the security that there was nothing in my walker. They then took the wand and wanded me. I was prissy clean, baby squeaky clean. The security agent then told me that I had to push my walker through the metal detector, and of course it beeps because it's metal. Then he says to me, "You now have to walk through the detector." No, that's not going to happen. Why not? Because I need my walker to walk. He said, "You still have to walk through the walker, otherwise you can't come in the room, come in the building." Well, if I had known that Rick Staley was sitting in here, we would have had a conversation out in the hall. But I didn't know that until I walked in the room that Rick Staley was here. Well, what would have happened if somebody had come in in a wheelchair? Would this, I'm trying to be nice, would this security agent have forced the person to get out of the wheelchair? I don't think so. But I was disrespected. I brought it to the mayor's attention, and we're gonna put an end to this so that it never, ever happens to anybody ever again. I'm done.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, please.
I'm Al Cryer from Committee on Safety on Cimarron. I want to touch real quickly on just 4 different items today. A question came up. We're going back to all of the people that are involved, residents around Cimarron that have to use it every day for another house to house. And somebody says, why are you doing it? You did this last year. And the reason we're doing it this year, to answer that question, is we have a lot of new ownership there. There's a lot of new construction. We wanted to bring everybody up to where we're at, and that was the idea of going back and updating to 2022. That was number 1. Number 2 was I looked back in the past, and in the year 2008, there was a pedestrian feasibility study approved, and somehow we fell on bad times, we had storms, just a lot of things happened, and it just kind of fell off the table. And this time, it's gone further. That's number 3. It's gone further than it ever has in the past. You people have brought it along, and I just want to make an appeal to everybody that we don't drop the ball. There's going to be a lot of other things coming up, but this one we have to push to get some of these streets in a safe manner. We'll never get them perfect because they weren't built perfect in the first place. And all we got to try to do is hey, this is what we can do, and that's the best we can do. Now, my last point was I wanted to thank everybody. We've got 3 C's involved here, and I've been missing some of them. Number 1, of course, is the City Council. They've been just fabulous. The city, Palm Coast, has just been terrific. I couldn't ask for anything else. The 3rd one, and I always seem to forget this group, is the Cimarron citizens. The volunteers just keep coming out of the woodwork, and I'm actually looking for things for them to do because they are really committed to this, and I think they understand it, and that's why we're trying to keep them up to date on everything. And you people have been fabulous. And I might mention, last time I submitted a question, by the time I was home, that answer was on my email already, which is just fabulous. So I got to thank everybody, and that's pretty much it for me this time. I'm going to miss you next week. I'm going to be taking a little trip, and one of our fellows will be filling in up here. And in closing, I always like to say this. This is a good place to live, and I like living here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the public that would like to come forward and speak at this time? Seeing no one approach, I am going to ask the city manager if you would just have a brief word with Mr. McDonald and take a look at the location so that we can react to that if you would. And then any other members of City Council would like to comment to any of the public comment that was made this morning at this time?
Yeah, well, first, I'm glad you're having our city manager take a look into this issue because something's obviously not right. We need to fix it. I hope everyone takes the time to go through what Alan Lowe put together on dredging. It's a lot of information. It's a lot to go through, but I think we may find some of it very useful, and we do have a local person here that does this for a living. It's worth, I think, at least having a conversation with.
Councilman Barbosa? Vice Mayor? Good, okay. So I will close public comment at this time, and we will move on to the presentation section of our agenda. And presentation number 1 is a resolution, so if council would read that title into the record for us, please.
Sure. Okay, this is the utility rate study resolution, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, authorizing piggybacking the contract with Palm Bay and Stantec Consulting Services, Inc. for the utility rate study, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute said contract, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for implementing actions, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Mr. Flanagan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council, citizens. Steve Flanagan, your Utility Director, for the record. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you the utility rate study for your consideration. We are excited to go through a thorough evaluation of our rate structure with Stantec Management Consulting. Making sure all utility customers pay their fair share, but only their fair share of costs, is a big part of what the study attempts to determine, along with many other factors. These studies better assure that the utility can and will stay financially, healthy while attempting to hold down costs and stay in line with services rendered. Today I have the privilege of introducing Mr. Andrew Burnham with Stantec Management Consulting to assist the city in this work. Mr. Burnham was highly recommended to me by an old friend that I worked with in the past that is now employed at JEA in Jacksonville. Andrew did an outstanding job for them, I am told, and we look forward to the same services coming our way. With that all said, please welcome Mr. Andrew Burnham.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. I have a brief set of slides to kind of give you an overview of the rate study process and how I think it would be able to derive a lot of significant benefit for you and the community as a whole. So with that, as Steve mentioned, at Stantec, we do a significant amount of consulting on utility rates and management issues. The team that I lead has worked with about 400 communities across the country, 130 in Florida. That's really where our roots and heritage come from. And so we've done about 1,500 rate studies in the past 10 years for those different utility systems across the country. And as Steve mentioned, we're very active in Florida doing rate studies with JEA. I've worked with Bunnell in the past, also Beverly Beach, Volusia County, Daytona Beach, up to Palatka, Clay County Utilities Authority. We've worked with almost every community in Florida, you name it, it seems like, but a significant degree of experience locally. But with that focus on rate studies, we really try to break these down into bite-sized components and pieces that yourselves as well as your constituents can understand in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. And really in rate studies, we're trying to answer 3 fundamental questions. How much revenue is required to cover the cost of operating and investing in the infrastructure to provide utility services? How should those costs be allocated to the different types of customer groups within the community, residents and businesses primarily? And thirdly, how do we develop our system of rates and charges, fixed monthly charges or conservation rates designed to capture or recover those costs? And throughout each of those processes, there's a number of different data points and questions that will need to be answered to make sure that you're doing so in a way that's consistent with your objectives. Both fiscal responsibility, affordability, promoting conservation, equity objectives, there's a good number of those. Generally, communities will follow a practice of annually looking at how much revenue is required as part of the budget process. When you adopt annual or biannual budgets, when you look at adopting multi-year capital improvement schedules, you're generally evaluating how much revenue is required as part of setting those budgets to cover your current year expenditure requirements. But looking at these other phases of rate designs, these questions about how should we allocate our costs to customers, how should we set our utility rates, and then also updating some miscellaneous fees as well as capacity charges, those are things that communities will typically look at every 3 to 5 years to take into account changes in their customer base, available data, changes in legal precedent or regulatory requirements, or changes in state statutes, or better available data that you may have from your billing systems. And so these are things that are conducted every 3 to 5 years, typically in tandem with updating those revenue requirements. But focusing first on the revenue requirements, a key component that the rate study will look at is evaluating your reserve policies and considering your risks and making sure that they're well factored into your financial profile. So the rating agencies, whether it's Fitch, Moody's, Standards & Poor's, or even industry associations like the Americans Water Works Association, give very good guidance about how to develop and evaluate reserves that are very much thinking about your current risks and also your future needs. And so this is just an example of an approach to go about evaluating and quantifying what sorts of things you need to consider as part of your reserve policies and planning for whether it's future needs, emergency expenditure requirements, liquidity needs for operations, contingency planning. We'll go through that process with your staff and team to really understand what are those risks and those future needs to make sure they're properly planned for and accounted for in a way that doesn't result in rate shock to your customers by way of having a sustainable system. Relative to cost allocation, the fundamental objective here is to really identify the cost to serve different types of customers to make sure that you're adequately capturing those in your rate structure. So there's some great manuals out there that we've contributed to that talk about the specifics of how to go through and identify the different parts of the system and allocate them. They're great resource guides that also double as really good cures for insomnia if you're interested. But the point is they give some very good technical advice about how to allocate your costs to customers in proportion to how they're contributing to them on the system. And through that process, you're going to gain some very good insights and understanding about how your customers use the water and the sewer systems that you're providing, as well as reclaimed water systems, and understand their characteristics of use. And this is an example from a community that we've done a similar study for, that when we provided this type of information as part of a rate study, it really helped people understand that we have to build facilities to serve these peak demands that only happen throughout the year, and that certain customer classes really cause those peak demands, and they should be contributing the cost of carrying the capacity year-round because they're the ones that are driving it. So those are part of the insights that we will look to be providing to you as part of the cost of service study, are your water usage characteristics by your different customers, and helping you understand how that translates to cost that you're incurring to provide utility service, and to making sure that your rates reflect that cost that those customers are causing you to incur. An important part of this process too will be considering reclaimed water. In Florida, this has been a big consideration for a number of utilities. It's evolved from means of effluent disposal, where there were agreements where golf courses were almost being paid to take reclaimed water a long time ago, to now it's a very valuable commodity for irrigation purposes. And it's very much viewed as part of your water resource portfolio. And so with that change in paradigms, we need to make sure that we really understand how much you're covering of your reclaimed water cost in your current retail rates, as well as your wholesale rates for low pressure to the various CDDs. But then also to make sure that we understand if there's any shortfall in reclaimed water cost, how are they allocated to the water system, to the wastewater system? It's a very important part of understanding of your cost of service is how you're handling reclaimed water, and to make sure that you have equitable cost recovery for your different types of customers, both retail as well as wholesale. Oftentimes with the passage of time, disparities will come up, and so these cost of service studies are a good time to reevaluate those policies of cost recovery and to make sure that they're balanced between the customer classes. And on rate design, looking at the different rate structures, this is very much an approach where we want to look at the different objectives that you have for your utility system to make sure that you're using rate structures that reflect those objectives and are best suited to accomplishing them. And ultimately, these rates that we would be looking at through the study would be designed to capture the cost of providing service to each customer class, but also reflect your policy objectives, whether it be affordability, conservation, economic development. All of those things are valid considerations in terms of how you develop and select rate structures. Part of our approach is to really do a diagnostic evaluation of your existing rate structure. This is an example from another community to just help you understand before we go in and look at things, how you're doing relative to some key objectives. And how you're performing. And it really helps us develop more specific and targeted recommendations for modifications to the rate structure that are in keeping with your objectives. So this type of a report card approach has been very positive in terms of helping break down what you're doing well and where there's some opportunities for improvement as part of the process. And also, as we look at rate structure, we'll do a significant amount of benchmarking. This is an example from a fiscal year 21 study we did for the city of Cocoa that just took their typical water and sewer bill and compared it to several agencies. And looked at their current rates as well as what they were proposing with some rate structure changes. And again, this is for fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22. These rates will all be a little bit higher. Just anecdotally, I think your bill at 4,000 gallons in 2021 would have been about right in the middle of this chart at about $74. I think today it's about $78 in fiscal 22. As part of evaluating any potential rate structure modifications, we're going to want to make sure that we provide you very clear understanding of customer impacts so that you can communicate those to yourselves, but also with all involved stakeholders to make sure that we know exactly how customers will be impacted based upon what type of meter size they have, what customer class that they are, residential or commercial, and how much water that they're using, so that they can see the impact that the proposed rate structure will have on them as part of any potential modifications and evaluating those. And last but not least, the study will also include looking at miscellaneous fees and capacity charges. And looking at miscellaneous fees, these are charges for making connections to the system, such as tap fees, turn-ons, turn-offs, reconnection fees. They're typically a very small part of your system revenues, but they're typically services you provide that are very specific to individual customers. So the important point here is we want to make sure that we're recovering the costs of those specific services being provided to individual customers through these rates, fees, and charges. And so they're very much cost-based, looking at labor, equipment, materials to build up these cost of service for providing those. And that will be something that will be looked at and as part of the study as well to update those miscellaneous fees for equity and cost recovery purposes. And lastly, we'll also look at the capacity charges, often referred to as impact fees, to make sure that the appropriate methodology is being used based upon your current complexion of cost, both what you've already invested in, but what's coming up in the CIP, to make sure that we're using the most appropriate method to update those fees, and to make sure that we're calculating them in accordance with the Florida Impact Fee Law. And there's some recent legislative amendments that were passed in the last session that we'll also be mindful of as part of the process in terms of any potential changes, how those would have to be implemented, consistent with that. And again, benchmarking will be an important part of this consideration as well, so that you'll know how your current fees, as well as any updates, compare to many of your neighbors relative to these water and wastewater capacity fees or impact fees. So with that, there's quite a bit of scope here and material that I've tried to condense down to a very short, brief presentation for your consideration to hopefully give you a better context of what we hope to look at and accomplish in the study.
So before City Council starts to ask questions, let me just go up to the top. Yes, very colorful graphs, a lot of information. The purpose of the study one of the purposes is to offer complete transparency to all of the residents of the city of Palm Coast. From time to time, there are questions on how these rates are determined and what the costs are. So I do want the public to understand that we undergo this very formal process in order to be as transparent as we possibly can and to make sure that we are comparing ourselves to many, many others in the region and throughout the state. Is that correct? Is that a good assumption?
That's correct, and we want to make sure we have very good transparency in that process about the methods and the data being used as well. So it provides that transparency from the beginning to the ending results, 100% accurate.
Okay, I have some additional questions, but let me open up to City Council.
Okay. Mr. Burnham, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your presentation.
Welcome.
Percentage-wise, if we weren't piggybacking this from Palm Bay, would that be percentage-wise 20, 40, 50% more on your costs, on your price?
There would be proposal development costs and competitive pursuit costs that would have to be factored into it if we were not doing a piggybacking approach. So percentage-wise, I'd have a hard time without running the numbers answering that, but it would be more. There would be more cost to preparing it.
Mr. Burnham, your company has about 400 customers throughout the United States.
Just on our management consulting practice. So.
Okay. All right. My only question is, this is a rate structure. The goal is cost recovery. And I'm going to ask you one question, one simple question. In every one of the cities that you could recall, was there any case, one case, where the cost for the residents or the customers was reduced with your study?
There's been a couple. It's very dependent on the circumstances, but one specifically where it happened was Marion County Utilities as a result of our efforts in looking at facility consolidation.
Was it because they were charging a lot and reduced it?
It was more a matter of efficiencies from operations.
Oh, and usually concerns me when studies actually bring the cost up to our residents. All of us here are residents, and when you do a study, and we know for sure that the price is gonna go up because we're checking the rates, either we're doing something wrong as utilities, or we're not doing something right, if you understand what I'm saying. That's my questions, thank you.
Councilman
You want
Branquinho,
to
if I
respond
can
to that?
step in for that a little bit. I think the goal here is for Andrew and his firm to aid the city utility in its operations and capital program to make sure that what we're doing is in line with others, that if there's any information he can bring to the table, along with our finance director and finance department, that we can work on making sure our rates are good rates, that they will sustain us for the long term, and that each customer that we have is paying their fair share. Not more than their fair share, but only their fair share. So these are some of the goals that it's nothing about trying to find a way to charge people more money. In no way
I don't mean to interrupt you,
is it
but
that.
every single one of the goals that I looked at is on his own comments. Every single one of them talks about cost recovery. And if we're gonna recover any cost, guess who we're gonna recover it from? And that's my fear. That every time you do a study, that actually it's gonna raise prices, most likely. Because when I mentioned 400 cities, and Mr. Burnham was able to mention Marion County out of 400 cities. Maybe there's a couple more that were reduced. 398 actually raised. I don't know if that's what we want to hear, to be honest, but prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
Well, I think that's to be determined in the analysis. In some cases, we've come in and looked at it. For instance, Cape Coral is a good example where there we've looked at their adequacy of their revenue streams to meet their current cost, and those revenue streams are adequate, so no increases were recommended. So you asked about decreases, but there's also been several instances where there's not necessarily been an increase. To Steve's point, I think the first thing is understanding what are the revenue requirements that you have to operate your system and provide the level of service to your customers. What are those costs? And then let's look at your current revenues and are they covering those costs? And if there's a gap or a surplus, let's talk about how that factors into a long-range planning context. And
So,
making sure that we have those
and at the end of the day, your study will provide some data, but Vice Mayor, that information will come back to the dais, so it'll be on our shoulders to make a decision on if cost recovery, the magnitude of cost recovery. So whether or not we can help our residents save, or what the cost of the system is. So it'll be our decision at that point.
Absolutely.
Good.
And right now, this study, it's gonna cost us what, 149,000? Is that what it's gonna cost us?
That's the up to not to exceed amount. There's some contingency included in that.
Okay, but still 150 grand. And I think, I'm sorry, maybe I'm being cynical about this, but spending $150,000, almost guaranteed that we're gonna, on top of that, we're gonna raise the prices. I could see it right away, because every single one of your goals talks about cost recovery, rate structure. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm being cynical about it, okay? But life has taught me to play it like that. And this is one of the cases that with all due respect, I mean it with all respect, because I'm not the technician you are. And I see this study not bringing anything to lower the rates for the city residents and the customers. Thank you, that's all I have.
All right, so I would hold that thought until we see the data, and perhaps we can dig down into that. Councilman?
Yep. Steve, when was the last time we had a rate study done?
I believe it was 2018.
Okay. So my concerns revolve around the long-term planning of our water utilities, because these are basically things that eventually someone's going to have to pay the piper. And avoiding long-term, or I should say, pushing this off and then having rate shock as a result of not knowing exactly how we're planning. I would hate to burden a future council with that, and I understand Councilman Burkino's trepidation for sure, but I also look at it from the regards of our financial department and long-term planning and how this is going to be something that's going to enable the expansions via the modules at our water plants, and how our future growth is really going to depend upon our ability to serve them with, necessary infrastructure, water. So I'm curious as to what the data will show, but I do understand that this is an operation in long-term planning, and how critical it can be that we, even if we have to make adjustments now, these adjustments will be more slight than comparatively if we push this off further down the road and we have to make a more severe adjustment. Is that true in thinking?
I believe that's very well said, Councilman. It's always, I can tell you under my command at least, I'm constantly looking at costs, trying to hold costs down. But in our business, there's new regulations every time we turn around. One of the things that Andrew spoke about in his presentation was the impact in reclaimed water and how that affects the water and sewer rates. And right now, there's new legislation from the DEP on how you can handle your reclaim. And it does nothing but add costs. So at the end of the day, sometimes maybe we need to, talk to our state representatives a little bit more, or do those kinds of things. But it's just commonplace in our industry. Regulation, comes out and it costs money to handle that regulation. For the most part, I think our consultants and our staff do an excellent job of trying to hold down those costs and plan, as you said, because it's extremely important in our business to plan smart. And so we spend a lot of time in our organization, not just the utility department, but along with capital improvements division in Carl's department, of making sure that we're thinking ahead on all of those kinds of things, because it is vitally important.
So, Mr. Flanagan, you mentioned under your command, and we're talking about long-term planning, so I remind you that a wonderful legacy is, through the extent of this study, is to help us, recover all we can and reduce our costs as best we can. I would love for you to sleep well for all of those days past your timeline.
Well, I appreciate that, Mayor, and as Councilman Branquino said, I've been a ratepayer probably longer than anybody in this room. And so I appreciate paying the bill at the end of the month as well. So Andrew and I, along with my favorite finance director, are going to work long and hard to try and make sure that we get the most out of this study, and that we try and hold our rates as low as we can, but don't put it on the backs of somebody in the future either.
I think you should do that, actually get the most out of this study, but not the most out of city residents.
Councilman?
How often is this study recommended?
So typically, 3 to 5 years is the general timeline for doing these types of studies. There's circumstances that may change, a major regulatory change or something else that would maybe trigger an interim update or doing something more sooner, but typically that's the general cycle for most
And you
utilities.
said the last study was done in 2018, and before that?
I don't want to quote you a date because I really would be guessing, Councilman.
And during 2018 to now, has the prices on water gone up?
Well, our rates are, what's the word I'm looking for? Work with the Consumer Price Index, so our rates do adjust every
CPI.
year with that index. So they have gone up. I can't tell you they've stayed the same since 2018 because they haven't. They go up with the Consumer Price Index. But hopefully we can stay to that, if not potentially lower it. So, we're not going into this with any preconceived notions of this is what the rate's going to be or this is how much the rate's going to raise. I can tell you that based on the times we're in the last couple of years, you probably know what that means right away. COVID, material supply chain issues, costs of those materials going up every day, chemicals going up pretty much all the time. They do fluctuate. Sometimes they come down a little bit. And labor shortage and price of labor. And contractors, I can tell you, trying to build a project today versus trying to build a project 3 years ago, Carl's probably going to tell you about that in a few minutes when it comes down to the Public Works facility. The numbers are going up pretty healthy. Now, we're going to do everything we can to keep those numbers, when it comes down to our rates, reasonable. But there is a lot of inflation out there in a lot of what we use. As consumers of just driving your own personal vehicle can see over the last year, it's basically doubled.
But you're using some sort of index, like you said.
Yes, sir.
So what is gonna be the difference by getting this, study done?
That will all be reviewed in the study.
$150,000 later.
I think the other part too is that it's not just the level of rates, it's the structure of rates and how costs are allocated. Because that hasn't been looked at in depth, and at least since the 2018, and even that study I think is maybe not necessarily as comprehensive as what's contemplated here to get to that transparency and equity understanding question. I think that's of pretty paramount importance.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on something. It's been 3.5 years since we've done this study. Is that correct?
Roughly, yes.
So you're talking we could go 5 years? You're just saying
Yeah,
before we could.
generally they're 3 to 5 years. It
3 to
just
5
depends
years.
on the community and the circumstances.
How long will this study take?
Depending on the availability of data, it's probably about a 6 to 9 month process.
Involves how many people from your company?
Typically 3 to 4.
3, 4 people. My concerns are along the lines of Councilman Burkino's concerns, and I just want to make that known. Because I don't think there's going to be a study where the prices are going to be lowered. And our citizens are all going to have to reach in their pocket and pay for those increases. Just want to make a note of that.
So with that in mind, I just had two other questions. As growth continues in the city of Palm Coast, do we enjoy any magnitude of scale? Would that be reflected in your study? In other words, as we grow and as we are producing more, we'll call it product for the moment, is there a chance that your study could indicate that we will see a downward trend in the cost per unit as the magnitude of scale increases, economy of scale increases?
Sure, that's certainly a possibility, and we've seen that with other systems. For instance, Cape Coral, I mentioned part of the reason why their rates are stable is because they have a high growth environment and a pretty big utility expansion program. So depending upon the degree of that, it could certainly have that kind of a positive impact.
And the study will consider that possibility based on our growth rate?
Oh, absolutely. That'll be an
Okay.
important input into the process.
And the other question was, will the study footnote, I assume there's a lot of electrical energy that goes into producing this product?
There's a fair amount.
So will the study footnote or look to solar power in any other parts of Florida as a future possibility?
I would say to the extent that we can work with Steve and his team to identify energy efficiency opportunities and quantify those, we could put them in similar to meter replacements. That's another example of how we've looked at what happens if you replace meters, what happens to billable volumes as part of that. So we'll work with Steve to the best we can to identify those types of efficiency opportunities and quantify them, but the study's not going to go specifically to say, here's the exact feasibility of putting in solar.
Okay, fair enough.
Does a study like this go out to bid, or just one person, how does that work? How do we know?
Piggybacking, I think with piggybacking, usually piggyback is good.
Let me ask the interim city manager
That's the first question.
to be clear.
Yes, to the point of piggybacking, you probably routinely see these on your agenda to piggyback. And there is a thorough analysis that we do even on the piggybacking. The benefits of piggybacking, at least from the staff end, it reduces the timeline and the cost investment from staff and adds value because we have an extensive list of the experience coming with that piggyback. I hope that's helpful.
Counselor?
I can add, if you'd like, a little more information.
No, that's
So
good.
in our procurement policy, we're required, if we're piggybacking, we're required to only piggyback on those contracts that have went through the same procurement policy we would have went through using our staff time. So based on this amount of the contract, it would have went out to bid, they would have got bids in and reviewed it, and this would have been the winning, bid for this type of study, but it was just done by another local government. And you can only piggyback on other local government contracts or state contracts. So that's how we get here, just to follow up on what our procurement rules say.
Councilman, does that answer your question? Oh, yeah. Very good. Any further questions at this time? Obviously, we'll be deep into this conversation when the study is returned, and we'll have a chance to review it, probably with a lot more data at that time. Okay?
I probably won't be here by the time, 6 to 9 months, so probably I won't be here by the time.
Will you be joining Mr. Flanagan, because he's on a timeline as well? We expect you both to be here so we can get to the bottom of this. All right. With that said, thank you very much for the presentation, and we look forward to the results. And I would ask Interim City Manager to keep us up to date on the status of the report, so we kind of have an idea of when it's going to reappear for discussion here, because obviously it's of significant interest to every one of our citizens and city council members. So we'll move on to the next item, which would be presentation number 2, which is the Public Works Master Plan update. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm here today to give you a brief overview of our Public Works facility. I know this has been an ongoing project over the past several years, so kind of just we're going to go through and backtrack a little bit and go through some history of where we've been, kind of and where we are right now. You know, this is a team approach where we have a construction manager at risk, Gilbane, and then we have our design team, which is Pond in the city. So we all work hand in hand through the design process, and then at some point further through, we will establish a guaranteed maximum price. This here kind of outlines the sequencing of moving through the project. We obviously have phase 1A, which is design. We're looking at updating the master plan, doing some design documents, then we'd move through, you know, establish the guaranteed maximum price, and it's a phased project, so we would then move forward with the remaining phases in future years. We did perform site visits. Variety of staff from various departments went across the state with the design team and the construction management firm, looked at other facilities, talked about the operations, talked about some new facilities, some older facilities, what they liked, what they didn't like, how they moved forward, how they funded the projects, some lessons learned. So it's really a data gathering tour of all these facilities that we could implement into updating our master plan. So we had done a master plan back in 2017. It was a project that was looked at being completed in 2 phases. We had done a land swap at the time. We were going to build our fleet facility on the south end of the site and then rebuild the north end of the site with a new operations area. Since that time, there was numerous organizational changes. The enhanced stormwater program was put into place. There was shifting of staff. There were some updates done. So when we hired the design firm, we said, we need to revisit the master plan and see if we're still on track with the proper approach. So we went forward, looked at the site, did an update to that master plan, and made a presentation to council. That initial master plan, you know, really looked at, in the future years, moving forward with satellite locations across the city, or segregating various operational tasks. Council pondered that and gave direction to staff to look at exploring avenues to rather separate functions or have satellite locations to rather expand a location to consolidate all operations, including the utility department, stormwater and engineering, and public works, into one location to better serve the city's needs. So we did look at various site locations. We looked at the existing site, expanding that site, buying additional property, doing some land exchange. We looked at other city-owned properties. We, in particular, one that was a little further north on US 1. We also looked at other properties across the city that were for sale or that were large and vacant that weren't surrounded by residential properties that could handle this type of function. The outcome was moving forward with option B, which was a little further north on US 1. Part of that included doing that operational analysis, what kind of impact would it have for the various organizations and departments that would be moving to this site, and that was the preferred location. It required the purchasing of some property to offset some land that was allocated for fields as part of the DRI. So we did move forward with the land purchases and creating a master plan, a long-term vision that consolidated all the departments to a single site, public works, utility, stormwater, and engineering, and looking at the city's long-term needs, 50-plus year approach as to can this site accommodate all those needs and how would that work on the site. So the graphic on the left shows that ultimate 50-plus year build-out of how that would work. It also, contemplates the extension of Matanzas heading west, because we know there's going to be future expansion of the city to the west over the rail lines. We know Matanzas is one of those locations identified for those needs. We will be coming back. You can see the construction to be done in phases. We won't be building the 50-year design at first. We'll be building our 10-year plan, which can then be expanded over time. We are currently looking at more of a phasing implementation plan that we plan to come back to you next month on, with more of a plan of how we're going to move the project forward. We currently have this project in the CIP. You can see there's some dollars in just about every year. This is going to be an ongoing project over many years to come. It is obviously we're going to build it in pieces. This is council's top priority project that we're tasked as staff per council's direction to make this a top priority in our capital improvement program. And as part of our closing out of our prior year fiscal year budget, any excess revenues that are available can be transferred to specific projects. That closing out of 21, there's $2.5 million that we're looking to move forward into this project to help advance the project. As Steve indicated in a previous discussion, costs are going up. There's two components particular that are driving up costs on this particular project. One is construction costs, just from a year ago are up 8%, and the building costs are in the double digits, probably near 15%. This larger site has some wetlands. Our previous public works site also has some wetlands, so there are going to be some wetland impacts. Those wetland mitigation impacts you purchase from a mitigation bank. Those are all in demand as there's lots of development out there. Those costs are increasing as well. So there are some added costs to the project we know will be there. We did have funding right around $16.5 million, over several years in the CIP to move forward with the fleet facility. We had all identified and agreed that the fleet facility was the first area that we needed to move forward with. We had some cost of design and permitting. There's going to be some wetland impacts. That will be determined based once we finalize the quality of the wetlands and what is actually going to be done in terms of site work for that phase 1 approach. And then we had some construction dollars identified. So this is a project we're looking to keep at the top of the list and to move forward as expeditiously as possible. So we keep looking at all avenues available to make that happen. So next steps would be at our upcoming meeting is to appropriate that fund balance to this project to help advance the project, and then we would be coming back March 8th to make a presentation of the phasing and implementation plan of our approach on how we're going to begin construction. And that really ends the update for today. Any questions?
So just before questions, I would encourage each city council member, if you can in your schedule, to make an appointment to go out and walk the site, our current facility, if you haven't done it recently. I think it would go a long way to have eyes on and talk to a few of the folks that are out there so you can understand, you know, the basis for these considerations. So I've been out there recently. I'm going to go out there again. So if you can, call in advance and get yourself a tour out there. I think it would be very, very helpful.
I've been there, announced and unannounced,
Okay.
quite a few times.
Very good.
Yeah, I was there this morning moving the skids around, no big deal. No, but it does open your eyes to the
Councilman,
necessity of the
question?
project.
You know, I've been there, and this is desperately needed.
Okay.
Yeah, the necessity of the project is definitely made apparent whenever you end up going over there and seeing the conditions that we're still able to produce the tremendous product of Palm Coast from. So thank you guys for all the hard work, and it takes a tremendous amount of planning to do this, so thank you guys.
And I do have one question for Helena, if I may. So the funding source, what part of, if any, of future impact fees would go to the actual development and construction of Site B?
There are no impact fees.
At this time?
At this time, we have various funds involved, because we have the stormwater fund and the utility fund, which are enterprise funds, which are paying their fair share for their portion of the development. And then the remaining portion for public works and non-enterprise fund applications are coming from the capital improvement fund.
So the question I'm asking for consideration for the future is, as we experience growth, is that a question that should be on the table? Should there be some impact fee as a result of all of that growth to support the development of this new facility? Just a question for future consideration.
Yeah, that's something that we definitely don't have in place, but we can definitely investigate what that would entail.
We're getting money from stormwater and utilities for the simple fact that we consolidated. Otherwise, it wouldn't be involved.
Right, correct. Right now, we've only looked at the fleet facility in terms of their funding portion of that facility based on the number of vehicles that are maintained in their prorated area of the overall number of vehicles that are maintained by that facility. So that's...
Put it in here. That's just put it out.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Moving on to presentation number 3. It's a resolution, so if you would read that into the record for us, please.
Of course. This is the concession lease agreement for the Palm Coast Harbor Golf Course. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, approving the terms and conditions of the concession lease agreement with the Green Lion Cafe LLC, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute the agreement, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for implementing actions, and providing for an effective date.
Mr. DiLorenzo.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council. Jason DiLorenzo, Chief Development Officer. And with me today is Mitch Lehman, the Golf Supervisor for Parks and Rec. Surprise guest, I guess. There was a team that I led to work on this draft agreement. At the time, Lauren Johnson, Parks and Rec Director, was out on leave, so she asked me to take this, and I'd like to just start with the fact that we still have work to do on this, but we wanted to at least get it in front of you and get some feedback from you. We're working off a draft. That's what's in your packet, and there's still some legal work that has to be done, but we work diligently with the current leaseholder to work out the terms that are included in this presentation, so we'll get started. All right, a little bit of history at the golf course. I noticed when I was reviewing this is not the history of all of food and beverage, just food and beverage at the golf course. So the concessions were originally included in the Kemper contract, if you remember, way back when Kemper managed everything. In 2017, when the city took over management, They split the RFPs into a maintenance RFP and a concession RFP, and then the current provider, the Green Line Cafe, was selected at that time, and the agreement was negotiated by the then city manager.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
A current provider was selected and the concession lease agreement was negotiated by the mayor. So was selected because there was more than one bidder?
In the end, I believe the RFP, there was only one.
Oh, there was only one bidder.
Okay, yeah, I think it ended up there was just one. An RFP was issued, and I think there was just one provider came forward, and that provider was selected. The RFP.
We had announced that prior, didn't we? Did we put it out there? And how did we put it out there?
It was an RFP, right?
To the point of the question, we're talking the history of the lease, and Lauren's coming up, so I'll turn it over to her.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The concessions was put out for RFP, so we put out an open bid, and the Green Line was the only bidder in that process.
Okay, thank you, that was my question.
I'm just confused. Are we talking now?
No,
2017.
this was in the previous history. They have a lease.
So we haven't put this out there for anyone else to bid on?
No, and we'll get to that, but basically, they have a 5-year lease with a 5-year extension on their mutual request, and they requested that extension.
Explain that specifically.
Sure. It's actually a 3 5-year lease. The first 5-year extension was at their mutual agreement. At their agreement only. They had the first right. They indicated, this is coming up, but they indicated that they wish to continue with the lease, and that would continue for an additional 5 years. And the third 5-year was on mutual consent. So then the city got involved. But there is a portion in our contract that allows us to terminate for convenience with 6 months' notice. So we do have an opportunity to exit the contract if we wanted to.
So we have an option to exit the contract. We have an option to put this out to bid if we wanted to, open it up to other restaurants in our community.
Yes, sir.
And I assume we have an option to raise their rent too going forward?
Yes, sir. Well, when it came time when they indicated that they wish to continue with the lease, that's when we asked them to come in and have a conversation about updating the lease to some more appropriate terms.
They're presently paying $1,200 a month, is that correct?
$600 a month.
$600. Well, I'll give you 7.
So, Councilman.
Or 8. I mean, that's pretty low.
Councilman, a suggestion, let's go through the history and then we can open it up for conversation.
Can I just ask, what's the square footage on this area?
There's some slides in there. If you'll just let me continue, I'll get to it. So the current agreement is with the Green Line, and it originated in 2017. As we discussed, it had a first 5-year term that ends at the end of August. They pay $600 a month, and the city currently pays all of the utilities, including water, sewer, electric, propane, and solid waste. And like I indicated, the owners, by mail indicated that they would like to continue with the operation.
Of course they want to continue.
So,
Why wouldn't they?
here are some of the desired outcomes staff was working within when we were negotiating. It was our intent to negotiate in good faith with the current tenants, since they indicated they wish to continue. However, we did remember a previous conversation that council had about their desire to get to a more market rate lease at the golf course. We needed to find a fair path to accelerate the lease to a market rate, because there's a big difference between $600 and what current market rate is. And there was some old RFP language that needed to be cleaned up in the contract, and we wanted to make sure we set clear expectations for both sides, because there had been some communication breakdowns over the years of the contract, some closures that occurred, some maintenance that took longer than you would prefer if you were a business owner leasing a space, and all of those items we wanted to address more clearly in the contract.
Wait, Jason, can I interrupt for a split second? Are we going to talk about the condition of the facility when they took over the restaurant way back in 2017, the additional improvements that they did to the clubhouse, and kind of like it wasn't as pristine and awesome as it is today as it was back in 2017?
Yeah, it should be noted that the Green Line did invest some money into the facility, yes.
Not more than what we did.
Well, I don't know.
Not when they made us take one ice machine that cost us $20,000 because of obstructing one table.
So let me ask staff, are you working towards a suggestion or a draft that you'll share with us, and then perhaps we can comment on that?
Yeah, we're gonna go through some of the changes here, some of the suggested lease rate that we've negotiated with them. They've accepted them verbally, but not.
Okay, so City Council, let's hear out what staff recommends, and then we can comment perhaps on each of those items. I just think we'll be able to come to consensus more easily that way. So please proceed quickly.
Okay, we cleaned up all the language. We clarified the utility costs. So the city will continue to pay water, electric, and solid waste. There's only a single meter for the building for water and electric, so that made sense. And the tenant will now pay for the propane and the business internet. They were also using our internet service previously. And there's some required collaboration in the contract on if there's going to be operational changes that's going to affect the business, maintenance, scheduling, and when there's golf events, for the tenant to be more responsive to, to tournaments and other operations. And Mitch is going to talk to you a little bit about this slide, but basically the total space that they currently lease is about 2,651 square feet. And we're going to suggest reducing that to 1,998 square feet. And if you look on the fourth line down there where it says the patio, that's where the significant change is, and Mitch will describe why.
So one of the things that we wanted to do was to have a clear definition of space, what they're using and what we would need to use for golf operations. So 4 days out of the week, our golf operations impact the patio space, whether it be for leagues, tournaments, outings, and or scoring for some of the activities that we're doing there. So that's why we did a reduction on that space, because when we are in that space, they cannot use it. So it's impacting their operations in order to fulfill our needs.
Yeah, but they still make money when we're there, because I've been there for a couple tournaments, and the guys put a table there behind them. They could use it. They're still using it. So I don't know. To be honest with you, once again, I'm cynical about these things. I don't know if it goes from 1,300 to 653. You're talking about 800 feet there? I don't know, but then again, you're the pros about it. I'm a little cynical.
In the afternoons, that's when it's performing a dual role with them actually buying beers and lunch when they do their scoring. But in the morning, when they're setting up the registration tables, they're doing their meetings and stuff, it does impact the space. Now, it's not as impactful as the afternoon when they do have more business coming in for the restaurant, but it is a shared space that we're using with them.
You know I'm going to be there checking this out.
I know.
And calling you aside. That's me.
How much is the city paying on the utilities all these years?
Mitch can give you some numbers on the current year.
So right now, the electricity.
Just a month, 1 month.
1 month. Well, the months range from $1,100 to $1,400 for electricity, and for water, it is.
And the city's paying for this.
Correct.
So you've been
for them to be there.
So we're losing money every month. The residents are paying for this restaurant to be there. Who made this deal? This is outrageous.
Like I mentioned earlier, there's only one meter that could be changed if you wanted to separate out the service for the restaurant and for the offices and pro shop and bathrooms.
So
but-
that number you just gave us, the $1,100, included like usage of the facilities by all the golfers not using the restaurant too?
Correct.
Okay.
Do we know how much?
I've ran multiple restaurants and owned multiple restaurants. It costs a lot more than $600 to run a restaurant and utilities.
Talking about $20 a day lease, including electricity, that costs double of what they're doing right
If
there.
the place
We have
was-
to do something. I hope we're not justifying something over here, because this is unjustifiable.
So, once again, let's let staff get to their recommendation.
I just have one question first, if you don't mind. How much profit a year does this restaurant make for itself?
I don't know, but the contract does give us the ability to request
But we
statement.
presently do not have that ability, is that correct?
No, no, in the current and future contract, we have the ability.
We have that ability now?
Yes.
So we could ask them now?
Yes, if
before
you'd like that
proceeding-
before this comes before you next time, we could request that.
You know, I think that's something we definitely need to do. I'd like to know how much they make a year. You know, when we figure out what the rate we should be charging is, which should be a lot more than the rate I've seen you guys propose, we perhaps could maybe make that work if we got a percentage of that profit kicked back to
So
the city.
again, I'm not sure staff has given us the rate that they intend to increase it to yet.
I went through the packet and the other day.
But
and
what
I
was
saw-
the final rate?
Huh?
What's the
I
final
think
rate 3
$1,200
years from
bucks
now?
or something?
Yeah, it's on the next, next slide
I'll give you
here.
13, Jason.
Might have a chance of
it
an
was,
RFP.
I can make a bundle with 13. Are you
we,
kidding?
we did a review of restaurant space that was available inside the city and in some surrounding areas, but taking some items into account, like you know, downtown St. Augustine, which may not have the same. That might not be a fair comparison due to the amount of tourism and so on. And we found that rates were between $15 and $19 a square foot, triple net, and that is not the situation we're in here because of how the utilities work and taxes and so on because of being a city facility. Now, you know, they're paying $600 a month, and we wanted to, you know, kind of, it was our intention to work our way to a market rate lease, just to be fair.
And I'm sorry, market rate is defined as how?
We define it as $15 a square foot. Okay. So in year 5, we achieved $15 a square foot. So how we structured this is in year 1, the lease would go from $600 to $1,207. That's $7.25 a square foot. And then there's a 20% increase each year, which then lands us at $2,503.09 per month in year 5. I'll give you a breakdown of what that is per square foot. In year 1, it's $7.25. Year 2, $8.70. Year 3, $10.44. Year 4, $12.53. And year 5, $15.03.
It will take 5 years to come to fair market.
Yeah.
At that time, it's not going to be fair anymore.
That is correct. So we're trying to work our way there. The renewal would then be tied to CPI after that, and would increase between 0 at a floor of 0, would never go down. So it would have a floor of 0 and a maximum of 3% based on the June CPI.
Just so you know, okay, the rental space obviously I know about because I rent all day long. Where the Staples Center is, those restaurants are 1,500 square feet and they're paying $4,000 rent.
I just want to.
I'm sorry, wait, how many, what's the dollars per square foot?
Oh, I'd have to divide
That's the
that.
way the industry works, so do you have the number?
Well, the average is $18 a square foot, which is way under. If it's a name brand, it goes up to $23,
So
$25 a foot.
You're telling us that it's $18 a square foot is market rate today?
$18.09.
$18, okay.
Well, I'd like to ask Councilman Barboza a question. Your family leases out a restaurant in Barboza Plaza, correct? Yeah. What are you guys getting a month for that, if you could share it?
I don't know if I can share that.
No, all right.
Okay,
It's more than
Councilman-
this, though,
All right.
right?
Way more than that.
Way more than this.
Vice Mayor.
You know, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make a suggestion here. I think we need to put this out for public bidding. I'm sure there's a lot of restaurants out there that would like a slice of this pie, and I think if we get the best deal, if we
Okay,
put this
so
out there.
let's let staff finish the presentation,
Yep.
and then they're going to be looking for your direction. So let's just get to the end of it, and then we can give him, the more specific direction we give them, the better result and return you'll get. So you may want to actually include the market rate number, a lot of things, so just let them get to the end first, and then we can give them our direction, so that they'll come back to us, okay?
Okay?
I'll wait until the end, but I'm boiling.
Okay, so good for the restaurant. Councilman?
Yep, so my questions would be revolving around the actual usable space of the facility, the kitchen. Is that, so it's $15 square foot is what we're trying to get to, but the kitchen, is that equitable to a different kitchen, like in the Barbosa Plaza somewhere, like you have a real kitchen compared to what we have here? Because this is kind of just like, would you call it a mobile home, or what would you call this? It's not like your normal space per se, so it's, I don't want to call it junk, but basically when they took it over, like would someone off the street, another restaurant, being willing to come in here and pay market rate? Is this property quality that would, yield market rate value?
When you're renting commercial space,
Yeah.
it's an empty space.
Yeah, but this is a little bit
So
different.
if it has more stuff, it actually adds to the
Well,
value.
actually, there's gray space, there's white space, there's tenant improvements, there's a lot of possibilities. So let's
Let's hear the rest of it.
yeah,
then.
please.
Gotta be fun.
Just wanted to point out that this again would be a 5-year lease with a 5-year renewal, but the renewal would be at mutual consent, not only on the tenant's side. We removed the termination for convenience, but that goes together with the joint agreement to move forward to a future lease. There are extensive termination for cause in the contract, which you can see, and that's all I have, sir.
So, okay, just before you start, so it's my understanding that staff would like direction at this point on how we proceed with the existing lease that we currently enjoy, and then if we want to perhaps put out for a bid on an RFP. So let's make each of our comments. You
Well,
wanna start?
I don't think we're currently enjoying anything.
Well,
I think
well,
they're
okay,
enjoying a spectacular
My
deal.
mistake. We're currently under an obligation of a lease, which we would have to remove ourselves from.
We can do a couple of things. We could just go right to this September 1st, 2026 amount and just jack up the rate to that, because that's probably fair market value today. Otherwise, I think we need to put this out to bid. We need to see who else comes forward. Let's have a good old-fashioned bidding war, and let's get the most bang for our buck out of this, because this is too much of a sweetheart deal, and I'm totally opposed to this the way it sits right now.
Councilman?
I mean, as we've seen all these years, only one person's been benefiting from this. The city residents have been paying for this restaurant to be there. That's pretty sad. That's pretty sad.
I just, okay.
Good.
Whoever created this contract, and by the way, let me say something, let me clear the air over here. I have absolutely nothing against the people that are there right now. The other way around, when I've been there, they've been nice to me, spoke to them. Has nothing to do with it. They are apparently decent people. Now, I'm gonna use the word shame, because I could use different words. But the word shame, that's what we should be using over here for the people that actually did this lease 5 years ago. And shame on us if we agreed to this. Shame on us. This is actually, let me use the bad word, this is robbing the people of Palm Coast. This is actually a shame. And to propose this over here, we need our staff. For the first time, I'm going to have a bad word about our staff. Our staff should open their eyes and not present. Once again, I'm going to contain my words, not present this to us. This is bad. This is shameful. Shameful. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, in terms of giving direction, so above and beyond that, what is your recommendation for the, for staff?
Bids, 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 bids. I don't know when this lease is over.
So,
When exactly is it over, if I may ask?
Technically,
It's over.
no, it's, the end of the first 5 years is August the 31st. They can renew with only their written request, which they did in April, last April.
So are we doomed over here?
No. The contract includes a termination clause in it that would allow us to terminate the contract with 6 months' notice, and we would have to forego the rent for that 6-month period.
So we're about that 6-month period.
Yeah, we're about a month shy,
shy.
but it doesn't, the termination for convenience can occur at any time. So it doesn't have to align with the end of the first 5 years. So to completely answer your question, how it is right now is the first 5-year term is nearly completed. They indicated they wish to stay, so that initiated the second 5 years, and then there's a third 5 years which would have to occur on mutual consent.
So you're saying for the 6 months, if we decide to terminate, we pay the rent?
Yeah, that we wouldn't collect rent.
Wow, this is great, man. Who writes these leases up?
I want to echo Councilman Burkino's words from a few moments ago. I don't blame the people that got this lease. I mean, it's a sweetheart deal. I would take it in a second. They're smart to take it if we're dumb enough to give it to them. But I don't blame them personally, but I just think this is outrageous. We don't want to find ourselves in a Bing's Landing situation that the county found themselves in. And that's what this reeks of to me.
Councilman Clufus, comment?
You did a tremendous job setting the scene today, Jason, of what occurred 5 years ago when we went out to bid and we got all of these responses, and Green Line was the only one willing to step in. And I say that sarcastically because the condition of the golf course today and this restaurant is top tier, and I think it demands even more than these numbers. Because if you go to the golf course, this place is packed wall to wall, and I understand that there's a scoring confliction later on in the day, but you see some of these groups, they all wear their same colored shirts, they're out there with a table that's 20 long. I think that we definitely have an opportunity here to reap some of the benefits of the transition that's happened over the last 5 years, but I don't think the council recalls when it was Canfields and when it was a literal like hole in the wall. So the condition that it is today is an abstract representation of what it was when we went out to RFP in the beginning, and I think that's reflective in the fact that at that time we were only able to get one submission for anyone who wanted to step in and try to turn the course of what was going on there. There wasn't really a food option 5 years ago to sit down and have a nice meal, was there?
No, it was more of a concession.
Like breakfast, sausage, egg, and cheeses in the morning. The kitchen was kind of run down, dilapidated. There wasn't really the position that we have today where a real restaurant, such as Green Lion, I'm not saying they're not a real restaurant, can step in, have almost artisan type food. You can sit outside and have a nice meal. I think I had mahi the other day. Like, this is real food that they're serving now. It was much different 5 years ago when this was put into place, but I think it is time that we take advantage of the ecosystem and environment that we built, and now we kind of extract out the value.
I understand what,
I kind of agree with you, but the thing is that even back then, and I still keep the word shameful that we're charging $600 when we're paying $1,200 a month. So back then was still a shame. And by the way, that the dilapidated kitchen, no doubt about it. But you want to know something? I guarantee you that we spent more money than they did. And the last one, they made us spend $20,000 by moving one icing machine because it was actually covering the view of the very last table at the corner. The city had to spend $20,000. They wouldn't budge. $20,000 to please them. That's what I'm saying. And dilapidated kitchens, I think we spent a lot of money, especially with the pipes. And I don't want to get into that because it's a lot more money than what they spent in there. And once again, I have absolutely nothing against these people. Let it be clear. They have been nothing but nice when I spoke to them. The other times, they've been nice to me, okay? The thing is that I just go back there. Shame that we know we're spending $1,200, no wonder Camp Brown is down. We finally have a golf course that it's a beautiful golf course, maybe one of the best, if not the best public golf courses in all Florida. And we're not taking advantage of this? Please don't present this to us. Please, staff, for the first time, I'm criticizing staff. Don't present this. Don't
Okay.
present this to us.
So, okay, I think we've looked backwards, and we certainly can learn from the past. So, in order to give staff enough direction to expeditiously come back with the result that we're looking for, I'll ask each council member. Councilman Danko, you're looking forward to an RFP that would go out for bid?
Yes, but I'm
Okay.
also looking forward to seeing what these folks make every year, so we know exactly what we're dealing with as far as the profit they're making. And, you know, we need to open this up to bidding. We just absolutely need to open
Councilman?
this up.
I would like the staff to go out and get, professional numbers on, price per square foot.
An appraisal, yeah.
Councilman?
I just think we should go out of bids. And then
Councilman?
if we stop, we stop, but at least we go the proper way.
Councilman?
I think having a fair market appraisal for the rentable space, but I would also be amendable to if the stipulation where we would be willing to go to the $2,500 a month versus, we'll just sever the contract and go back out to RFP. There might, once we get back the numbers on what the value of the property actually is worth, if it is around that number, I would say if that is, presentable to the rest of the council, give them an option, like first right of refusal, and if not, they don't want to meet us there, then we go out and we RFP it.
Yeah, I agree with that, give them first rights of refusal.
Okay. Counselor, based on the current contract that we are engaged in, what has to be done in order to execute our ability to, what was the term you used?
Terminate for convenience.
Terminate for cause?
Well, I'm sure we have to provide them with written notice and then
And-
give them the 6 months to,
And cause itself,
No,
cause is a
cause.
bothersome term to me.
No, it's not termination for
It's-
cause, it's
it's-
termination for convenience.
yeah.
Convenience,
for
I'm
any-
sorry,
So
okay.
any reason, the city can terminate.
Very good. I
Yeah,
just want to
there's
make sure
not
we're
a
not,
cause
we're not digging
tied
our
to
hole
it.
any deeper. Okay, very good. All right, staff, does that give you enough direction to come back at a meeting in time to fit into this 6-month window?
Couple questions to clarify,
Please.
and then I'll try to sum it up, and you can tell me if I have it correct, okay? Would you like to see bids to split the cost to split the utilities, to have a separate meter, separate water meter, separate electric meter?
Yeah.
Unless you could go back to like when it was Canfield's just to see the difference in kilowatts used to like see how much the kitchen stuff is actually different now. I'm just curious, has it always been the same kilowatt usage? But yeah, you can do.
I think,
Exactly, yeah.
Mitch had indicated in our conversations that when they're busier, obviously then the costs go up. It's noticeable when they're busier. It's reflected in the bill, but I'm not sure what our ability is to look back at that, but we can try to bring both of those things back.
That's not
Consensus
including
seems to split, okay.
That's not including the golf cart charging, is it?
No, that's at a separate facility.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's, just in a situation that we don't lose money. Because in order to pay the extra $600 a month, you know how many golf times, okay, we have to pay for that? So that alone, you know what I mean? This, right now, just so you understand, they're paying $20, right now, they're paying $20 a day, including propane, water and sewer, electric, and solid waste, and 2,000 feet of square footage. That's what they're paying. Now, I'm pretty sure people out there are listening to us.
Actually,
Are they calling us something right now when they're hearing this? No, and not, I'm so sorry. I'm being
it
cynical.
was 2,600 square feet, they're gonna drop it now to 2,000. So it's
Councilman
even worse.
Bertino raises an excellent point, I think, that if we don't open this up to bidding and make this very transparent, it gives a public perception that
think-
there's some backdoor, under
So,
the table sweetheart deal.
I
and
think
we
we've
don't
already,
want that.
we've already formed consensus. Now we're just giving direction on the RFP itself. So we've already found consensus on the dais for that. Further questions?
I thought I heard the potential to ask them to accept the $2,503, but I think maybe you're moving away from that now and you just would prefer to go out to bid.
We need
For
to know
pro-
the
for
fair
proposal.
market value to
Correct.
decide this number, you know?
Honestly, that's kind of where I'm at as well. It's like we figure out how much it should be worth, and then we kind of say
Right.
amongst ourselves, like, do we tell them this is what it is, or we go RFP or not?
You have consensus on fair market value, okay?
Okay. Which would be determined through the RFP process. So we will go out for proposals and see what they come back, and that will help us determine the fair market value, and then we will negotiate the lease based on what is returned. So the RFP will expect the bidder to include what they intend to pay. Yes?
Well, okay, that's a very good question. Hold on.
Fair-
Oh, wait. Okay. Do you want to give staff direction on what your fair market value is?
I think we should get a pro to kind of take a look and tell us what stuff is
So
leasing
can we direct
for.
staff to identify a
Sure.
professional to identify what fair market value is?
Yes,
Okay?
yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that'll help you with the process.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
I just want to add that by criticizing, if it's construction criticism, if I'm doing it publicly, it has to be constructive. And in no way, shape, or form, I meant to be rude or telling you that you did something wrong, okay? I just don't want to see this. I think that should be a little more persistence on your side. That's the only thing I'm saying, basically, okay?
All right, with that concludes the presentation for now?
Yes.
We look forward to your bringing back that information. Thank you. Let's see, our next presentation would be an update on our legislative priorities. These are priorities that we've previously agreed, presented, and you're just giving us an update now?
Yes, City Council. This is, it's been 6 months since you adopted the priorities, so we wanted to come back and give you an update on where we are in the process, what we've achieved to this point. So you'll remember back in August, these are the 3 priorities that were included. We sent them to the county for inclusion in the Northeast Florida Regional Council's priority list. They included the PEP system power restoration prioritization, Old Kings Road Phase 2 and 3 construction. You'll remember Phase 2 and 3 are from where the new construction just concluded up until Forest Grove. And then transportation access to the west. And we will start with the PEP system. This was the priority as it was presented back in August. And the action is to have the PEP systems included in as a priority for electrical restoration, since most of them are outside of our evacuation zones, and which means the residents tend to stay. And if they don't have power to their PEP systems, then it can cause health issues with sewage backing up into the house. So far, we met with the local FP&L representative on the December 16th. She was aware of our concern, and we continue to have that conversation with her. FPL seems to have an understanding of the issue, but are not willing to, at this point, make that a part of their critical infrastructure list. So we started working with the EOC manager at the county, Jonathan Lord, to have the PEP locations added to the critical infrastructure list. And tomorrow we are meeting with Kevin Guthrie, the Florida Director for Department of Emergency Management in Tallahassee, to discuss the issue with him and try to get some top-down movement And if you remember, Kevin is familiar with Flagler. He used to be our county emergency manager, so it should be we're expecting to be able to have a robust conversation with him because he should be familiar with the situation. As an alternative, the utility department has also been working on the potential for using solar energy to power the PEP systems in times of electrical downtime. So they're still working through that. They're doing some projects with a PEP system they have at the utility department. For priority number 2, that was the phase 2 and 3 of Old Kings Road construction. You'll remember that this has been on the River to Sea TPO project list for quite some time. It is currently not in the FDOT's 5-year work plan, and in the proposed 2023 work plan, it isn't included as well. We worked with our lobbyist and we filed a direct appropriations request to the Florida legislature. You can track that under House Bill 3967. The estimated cost for the 2 phases is just under $18 million. And it passed through its first committee on January 13th, and it's now in the full appropriations committee, but that vote hasn't been scheduled yet. That is generally towards the end of session, and session ends March the 11th. Transportation access to the west, this was a new priority that was included. We have large tracts of land that are currently locked by the railroad tracks, and we are completing a study to look at Matanzas Woods Parkway, Palm Coast Parkway, and Whiteview for potential access to the west. We would likely need more than one access point to unlock those lands. At Matanzas Woods, you saw from Carl's presentation that we're reconfiguring the roadway into public works, so that made that access a good starting point for us while that study's being completed. As part of the public works facility, some land was acquired from the landowner to the north. That would help us place the road in a good place and look for opportunities to get over the railroad track. So again, we put in a direct appropriations request to the legislature. That's House Bill 3391. First phase of construction is estimated at $3.1 million, and again, that was passed out of its first committee and is now in the full appropriations committee. And we are meeting with our representatives this evening to continue to further this effort to get the state to fund these projects. And I will take any questions.
I would just make a comment. I do attend every TPO, Transportation Planning Organization, board meeting down in Volusia. I want my fellow city council members to realize that we are a part of a quasi-governmental organization. There are 7 in the state, if I remember correctly.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Anyway, we're part of a region of which Volusia has the lion's share of votes and voices at the table. So I'm continually frustrated, just so you all are aware, in trying to get our projects on the DOT's list. So I will continue to, be at every meeting and shout as loudly as we can. But we are the smaller entity, in the room at this time, trying to move our projects up against what goes on in Volusia. But we'll be as loud as we possibly can. And also, those, by the way, those are all public meetings. I certainly would invite council members and/or the public to participate in the TPO meetings. You can also watch them virtually. The more residents of Palm Coast and Flagler County, for that matter, that were to participate, I think it would make a difference. So I'll keep you up to date.
Well, if you'd like some help shouting, I'd be happy to join.
I would count on that, and I invite you. Thank you for that.
I just have something actually, you have to admit when you're wrong in the past. And I was wrong in the past regarding priority 3. And when I did not see the access points from the east towards the west side. But more and more, I believe that this transportation access to the west side of US 1 should be encouraged. And should be encouraged to whom? Mainly investors, builders, because we gotta start taking some of the traffic on east side of US 1 towards all the space, because we are a big city. We are definitely a big city. We are 12 miles by 8 miles. By going on the other side, we already got an hospital already on the other side. Business will move if we get some kind of a supermarket, gas stations, and like that. And the builders, if they start building on the other side, okay, I think that even if we have to put some money of our own, that's an investment to save. If we could come up with more accesses, that will open the opportunities for people to actually start building on the other side. And that's something we need. I think right now, Palm Coast, we're feeling it. We are feeling it. And I had a conversation the other day. I was about to go to your walk on your 3030, and it took me 6 minutes in an intersection that actually it's, you remember that, Denise, when I told you about that, because I was about to go meet you on that. 6 minutes in one specific spot. So traffic-wise, we're doing pretty bad on this side already. And this is nothing compared to what we're building. So if we could, I don't know if there's a way that we could encourage, maybe through the Home Builders Association or through investors, to start moving on the other side. There's plenty of money to be made on the other side, okay? And that will help ease up a lot of the questions do we have over here. I mean, just thank you for the thing. And at the beginning, I was leery about it. I'm absolutely confident about it right now.
Yes, thank you for that, Councilman. The planning department agrees with you completely that our current north-south corridor, Belterre, our main north-south corridor, it doesn't have commercial opportunities on it, right, which drives all the neighborhood traffic down to Palm Coast Parkway or down to State Road 100. Through the Palm Coast Park DRI, there's plenty of commercial opportunities along US 1. However, we don't have the households to the west to support those commercials. So as we grow west, we would expect a recentering of the city along US 1, which is a more appropriate north-south corridor for commercial, and this will help alleviate the pressures that we're seeing on Palm Coast Parkway and State Road 100.
Thank you for the job you're doing regarding this priority 3. I think it's a very good opportunity if we start encouraging the people that owns there to actually start doing something. And if there's the city, if the city has to do anything to incentivize it, okay, as long as it's not crazy, I think we should do it. I don't know if through advertising, I have that part I leave to the pros.
So Vice Mayor, I appreciate your comments. I could not agree with you more. I would also appreciate the loud voice that was offered before. And I can tell you that the voice will be heard no later than this evening regarding your comments.
Thank you
and
very
that
much.
will be in Tallahassee. So there's no waiting.
Loud.
That's
Make it loud.
as loud as we can. Very good. Okay, thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Next item on the agenda is public participation. Are there any members of the public that would like to make a comment on an item not previously discussed on the agenda or earlier today?
Robert McDonald, Palm Coast. As a member of our community, I would like to know why, when the 3 presentations were just done, why wasn't it open to the citizens if the citizens had a comment? Because I had a comment about the golf course and the Green Lion Cafe only because, correct me if I'm wrong, my mind is not as sharp as it used to be. Isn't the golf course the same golf course that we used to have the contract with Kemper? Isn't that the same golf course? And we took a beating ever since we've owned this golf course. I don't care how pretty it gets, we still take a beating. And it was proven this morning, if that's the same golf course. Thank you.
Ms. McDonald, I think you commented just on procedure, so I think council can just,
Yes, for workshops, the city council doesn't make any decisions per se. They can direct staff with consensus, so that's why each individual item isn't opened up, because the city council can't take any action during a workshop.
Yeah, but it was
Yeah, the next business meeting.
The one was a resolution and nothing was done.
Yeah, because nothing happens at workshops. It'll be at the next business meeting where the resolution will come back, and then there'll be public comment available during the business meeting.
So, next week, they're gonna have a meeting, and that same item will come up, and then we can get up and make comments.
Well, yeah, it depends on, given what happened, so yes, that would have happened, right? If we would have proceeded down that path, but the city council gave direction to staff to look at additional information. So I'm not sure at that time when it'll be coming back.
Okay.
Staff has to gather the information they
All right.
requested.
Well, whenever they come back, I'll be here.
we're now at discussion by city council of matters that were not on.
There was one more person in.
Sorry, apologies.
Come on, Sir.
Sims Jones. And I was hearing about improving things on the west side across the tracks. I'd like to go on record now saying we're doing a lot of building here, but the building that's going on here, people really cannot afford to live in those houses. So when we look at that building up over there on the west side, are we gonna look at more affordable housing? You know, housing for people to live in. If you want some places, you want businesses to come in, you gotta have some place for these people to live. And right now, the housing that's being built, most of the people cannot afford it that's living here. So we would like to make sure that you include that in your proposal and in your plans, that we get more affordable housing for the people here of Palm Coast. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the public that would like to come forward and make comment now? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and city council comments. So
It's February 8th, 2022, and already 2 young gentlemen have been murdered in the city. It's sad. Got to be more patient out there. Try to stop the violence. It's very sad. No parent should be burying young kids. That's it.
I just have a procedural question for council. Workshops, we normally don't make motions, pass things. We have that option, though, should we choose at a workshop to deviate, or do we not?
No. Typically, workshops are just informational. The board can provide consensus and direction, but
Right.
actual motions to, bring things up or make any type of decisions, that's not the format for the workshop. That should happen in a business.
And that's just per Robert's rules, per charter?
That's per what we have established for these workshop.
Okay, but
workshop meetings.
council could change that at any time during a workshop?
I'm sure you could, then it would essentially be a regular meeting for purposes if you were gonna do that.
And not that that's,
conducting business.
not that that's come up, but it could come up and we could make that decision amongst ourselves to deviate, correct?
Sure, you can set out the meetings you wanna have, how you wanna have them, when you wanna have them, what you want included in, that's at the council's discretion.
Okay, thank you, that's all I
and
want.
so we do work with a written set of policies, procedures, and rules, which is up to city council to continue and to adjust as city council feels
One-time
necessary.
deviation, if we choose.
Well, you could set a special meeting in that case. That's what you typically do if there's something that the city council wants to hear about and wants to have like a public discussion about and then make a decision, you could call a special meeting. You could bring that up to the city council by motion at a business meeting.
My question, bring it up at council during a business
Yes,
meeting?
during a business meeting.
During a workshop and just change it to a business meeting for a moment. Do we have that option, is what I'm asking?
No, it would have to be noticed appropriately.
It would be. That's what I was curious about. Thank you.
I
Vice
mainly,
Mayor.
the problem I have with that, with all due respect, is that the reason we have workshops is exactly to give us time to absorb everything that's told to us by staff or other means, and gives us time, at least a week, to go out there and do our homework, like I'm gonna do from today. Instead of rushing into emotion and sometimes, making a mistake, and sometimes then those emotions are hard to reverse. We don't even finish a workshop, okay, with a motion to adjourn. And that should be the only motion that we do. We don't even finish that. And I have a lot of workshops at home. I work my wife's shops. That's
I hope she's not listening, Eddie.
that's basically it for my comments today.
Okay, Councilman Clufus,
I
any
can't
final
top-
comments?
I can't top that one, thank
Very
you.
good, okay, very good, I appreciate that. Is there any discussion by the city attorney?
No, I have none.
Is there any comment by the interim city manager at this time?
I have one. Specifically assisting Mr. McDonald, I stepped away from the dais, and I know that there was some public comment that maybe I can assist with. Specifically, the saltwater canals discussion. I would just bring to council's attention at the end of the agenda, there's a very fluid document called a worksheet, and you'll notice that our staff will be here next week to give an update.
Very good. Thank you for that. A last comment for today. I would like to thank everyone that participated in the 30-30 challenge, record-breaking, and we will have gifts for all of those that completed or completed the challenge coming up at a next meeting. So thank everybody for trying to be healthy. And Councilman, I agree with you on the status of the community. So hopefully we can set the example and turn these tragedies around. So thank you for that. And with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
No motions in workshops. You just adjourn.
Oh, you're right, I'm sorry. Just checking on you.